It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
I think the market will certainly increase. The confidence will potentially still slowly come back, and maybe that hesitation and cautiousness that buyers have got, maybe that slowly will disappear in the first quarter with people missing out on homes this year and wanting to purchase before this market starts giving again.
And that is Chris Scerri, an auctioneer on the Real Estate Breakfast. We'll come back to that very interesting conversation in just a moment with Chris. And welcome back to another episode. Your knowledge-based property podcast is 7 days a week from all corners of the Australian housing market. And it has been that, hasn't it, right across our year. It is a Thursday, November the 27th, just about into December. And good morning if you are in Darwin, especially if you are a property owner there. What a year the property market has had. Darwin is shaping up to be the nation's standout property performer next year, with prices forecast to jump 12 to 16%, outpacing every capital. SQM's researchers' latest boom or bust report does say that Darwin's unique economic fundamentals, their strong first home buyer activity and tight housing supply is the major drivers for what is going on. Meantime, Sydney and Melbourne expect modest gains, along with Perth, Brisbane and Adelaide, which is set to lead Australia's next growth cycle. Talking of Sydney, let's go to Sydney right now and catch up with Chris Scerri, an auctioneer there. And good morning to you, Chris. Welcome back into the Real Estate Breakfast. Yes, I just want to pick up on that point. Sydney's property market is running on a medium high heat, energetic, competitive market, but not in full bloom mode. They say that nearly 1,000 homes went to auction over the weekend, achieving strong results without reaching a frenzy of 2021. Clearance rates sitting around 65%, and prices are up roughly 7% year on year, showing that steady above trend growth. So Sydney auctions, they remain pretty busy with strong prices where you are. That point being made, not as extreme in the COVID era boom.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Craig. The market is certainly heating up a little bit compared to what we had been experiencing over the last, say, 2 to 3 months. However, a good number of auctions actually attending and scheduling. Over 1,400 scheduled in Sydney last week, with over 1,000 of those properties actually running to auction. However, it's certainly a good amount of stock, but maybe in some locations, a little bit of an oversupply at the moment. Less buyers out there, oversupply of properties, a little bit more slim on numbers on buyers actually turning up and registering and competing really strongly. However, of those percentages of buyers registering, we are still seeing only about 50% of them to be actively bidding and securing those homes. So a little bit of a lower number, where back in the peak it would have been much higher than 50%. The market's still strong for those great homes, those great properties in great locations with no warts, what I like to call, but with no unencumbered blocks, no issues on the homes, all renovated, completely ready to go. Those properties are still getting premiums.
So really interesting that you're saying that there is a cautiousness with maybe 50% of people turning up to bid. What is the through line there, Chris? What is the commonality with those buyers being cautious? Why is that?
Look, I think there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's the cautiousness by going, well, this is a property that I want to buy. Is it going to tick all the boxes? And a lot of the buyers are saying, no, it's not going to tick all the boxes. So they're not going to go fighting tooth and nail to get the property. Where back when it was COVID numbers, there were less properties. So they were really shooting and going hard for those homes, knowing that the market was increasing. So what we're seeing out there is buyers, and they're simply saying it to us, well, if I can get it for the right price, we'll buy it. Well, what's that right price? So that they've determined where they see value on that property before they attend, which is fine, that's normal. But when they're getting there, there's just that hesitation by, well, if I don't get this one, there's another one around the corner. I'll go buy that property. We'll go have a shot at that. So I think there's a lot of cautiousness in the wind by the amount of stock now on the marketplace, which is very interesting, especially in particular suburbs, upper North Shore and lower North Shore numbers. But then the second part of it, it's at that time of the year now where we'll just wait until next year. We're not really too fussed whether we buy now or later. We'll just wait to see what this market's going to do. We're not sure what's going to happen. We think another interest rate rise, another interest rate cut. Everyone's all over the place with where their expectations are for next year's market, so that the cautiousness comes both ways for buyers at the moment, what we're seeing.
So buyers at the moment, are you saying that there is an advantage, like it's a buyer's market? And the second part to that is the conditions and terms, because when there is more stock on the market, buyers can put in more terms. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, we are. Absolutely. We're seeing more properties being pushed back. So scheduled, say, for instance, the 29th of November, then they're pushing the property back because there's a lack of interest on the home. So agents are pushing them back, which just shows that there's just no interest on the home. So they're pushing the properties back for them to be able to try and gain some more momentum. The buyers themselves at the moment, the choices that they've got is extraordinary. If you're looking for a duplex in the Ryde and surrounding suburbs, there's a significant amount of properties to choose from. A lot of those buyers are going, well, maybe I'll just hold back and wait to see what happens early next year. The terms on the contracts, they're not going through the roof, as in they're not expecting too much, but some of them are expecting to have longer settlements, which is great. That's fine. Suits some needs for owners, but some owners are certainly wanting to close out before the end of the year for financial reasons as well.
That is Chris Scerri on our Thursday. We'll continue this conversation about the property market in Sydney and the auction market. We're back after this.
We help to break down real estate every day to help you better understand the Australian property market.
Right, let's catch up with Graham Berman from Ray White in Sydney. What a lot of parents do decide to do, Graham, and you've probably seen this, is they say, right, we've got to sell the family home so that we can extract the money out of it. We'll then go to a smaller property, and yes, we can then buy our son, our daughter, their property, in many cases buy them outright and then just have them rent it from them, sort of a rent to buy sort of situation.
Absolutely. And I am seeing that. But remember, the parents need to be at a point in their lifestyle where they're prepared to actually downsize, or is it a sea change, etc. But what happens in the case where they're not ready to do that? So there are opportunities and alternatives. I mean, you could look at, do you re-mortgage your property? Do you reverse mortgage your property? Can you take equity out of your property? And again, I think what I always come back to is, if you've got some really good data, you can make educated decisions. Yes, there is a risk. Property prices aren't going down, but if you're making the right decision with the right data, and you can minimize the perceived risk for that parent, which enables them then to reverse mortgage their property and put equity into another property, there are alternatives to having to sell up and take all the risk on.
Eager to expand your property expertise? Enhance your real estate know-how with us. Let's explore together the power of real estate.
And it is a Real Estate Thursday. Yes, talking about the auctions coming up this weekend, it is always that time of the week where you start to really narrow it down and start making those decisions. Where are we going to go on Saturday? Chris Scerri, he is an auctioneer. He is with me. That whole rationale, it's a real thing, isn't it, for buyers to work out, because there's so many of these auctions happening in Sydney. You must sort of strike this where people say, gee, I just can't get to your auction, Chris. There are a few of these other auctions that I need to go to. How much of a problem is that, from an auctioneering point of view?
It's not a real problem. The reason around that, COVID did teach us a lot of lessons for agents and for auctioneers, knowing that Saturday is not only the biggest day of the week these days in regards to auctions, it's still a great day for auctions. However, agents and also vendors and auctioneers are more open to every day during the week, midweek auctions and also Sunday auctions. The amount of properties that are just specifically on Saturday are still really strong, and it is the main day. However, as I mentioned, everyone's open to other days, which seemingly show really good strength. On Sundays, last year we had 100% clearance rate. This year for Sunday auctions, we're still sitting at a 79% clearance rate for every auction that we've conducted. So still really strong stats. For the midweek auctions, they're just really relaxed rather than your Saturday where you just mentioned, Craig, a buyer's going, well, what time are we going to start? Let's go. I've got another auction to go to. And they're already preparing to miss out on a couple of homes and wanting to go to 2 or 3 or 4 auctions any given day.
What about those phone bidders? Has that sort of grown? Like, obviously that is a way to approach the clash times. You're on the phone, or you've got somebody else who you've said to, right, here is my budget, you can go to that. So there could well be 3 or 4 people acting on behalf of the buyer with those instructions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I had an auction up in Newcastle only recently. We had 30 registered buyers on that property in particular. Really, it was quite a unique auction in itself for the supply of the product of what it was. Every agent in that office was on the phone, and we had 10 agents on the phone for 10 registered buyers, and we had 20 registered buyers in the room. So quite unique online capabilities along with the buyers wanting to bid and purchase over the phone. It's certainly available for them, and a lot of people are taking that up, knowing that it's just as easy to be able to do that as in person as well.
I mentioned that we're in countdown mode. November the 27th today, not a lot left in the month. Then we are into December. Having a look at that first quarter, when we come back after the Christmas holidays, the New Year break, everybody is feeling a little bit more refreshed, ready to really kick on with 2026. How do you think the first quarter is lining up from, these conversations that you're having from vendors that are going to list after the Christmas New Year period?
All agents now should be pretty much focusing, if not already been focusing on for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks on setting stock up for next year. This market, 29th, will be our last biggest day for the year. We're conducting over 63 properties going to auction that week itself. The first and second week of December are certainly slowing down for us. We won't see too much more activity, but we can already see plenty of bookings coming in for January, which is interesting, but also February bookings at the moment as well. January is a 0 month for most auctioneers, just for the fact of unless an agent starts the property this year, they generally won't be able to conduct a 4-week open home round along with an auction to be done on that 4th week. So the first week of February is always our strongest. People wanting to get a jump on the marketplace, which is understandable. It's a great tactic in my opinion. But then February, as mentioned, is I think it's going to be a really strong quarter.
Yeah, you talk about making a jump on the market. I think that is now. For all of you buyers that are saying, well, there's so much stock on the market in Sydney, just as we've been talking about, they're leaving it until, well, that property doesn't quite line up. Let's wait for the next one, or perhaps let's buy next year after the Christmas New Year period. Well, you start getting some of that FOMO in the first quarter coming back in, and some of them will be kicking themselves not getting into the market right now.
I think that the market over the last quarter, so from August to November, we've had a market increase from the housing market from 2.1 to 3.4%, depending on which outlet you read. It was a strong quarter to be able to have, and I think it's going to start again next year. I don't think we're going to slow down. I think the market will certainly increase. The confidence will potentially still slowly come back, and maybe that hesitation and cautiousness that buyers have got, maybe that slowly will disappear in the first quarter with people missing out on homes this year and wanting to purchase before this market starts giving again. And I think we're going to see that early next year.
Good on you, Chris Scerri. You have yourself a fantastic Thursday, also a fantastic break coming up next month into the new year and then back into it for 2026. And thanks for coming back onto the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
Thanks, Craig. Always appreciate it, and have a great Christmas. Talk soon.
If you're a new listener, welcome. We talk to the most knowledgeable real estate experts across Australia every day from 6 a.m.
We work with over 10,000 renters a year, and our experience from what we hear is that there are a lot of bad landlords. I'm constantly surprised at the lack of support, interest, care that they feel towards their renters and the properties that they own.
Now, as I say, Victoria is about to introduce the latest 5 reforms from the state's 150 rental rule changes since 2021. Quite a lot of news to get through here.
There is, and here in Victoria, we have a number of new reforms that came in yesterday here in Victoria that are great news. The big one, I think, is that any notice now for a reason to vacate or a notice of a rent increase must be made at least 90 days in advance. In the past, it was 60 days. That's a great improvement for renters.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.